Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Robert, and today I want to make a different type of video. I'm not gonna review a game or do a playthrough or anything like that. Today I want to discuss my method for how I learn games. And the reason is I've always found it interesting how some people have different approaches. Some people will rely on video, some people will just set up and start playing the game and figuring out as they go. So I want to share my method, and maybe this will give you a couple ideas for those that struggle with learning more complex games. Okay, and the game that I'm going to start with as an example here is going to be Imperium Horizons. So this is the well, technically Imperium Classics, and this is the Horizons rulebook that supposedly is better. All right, I never read the original rulebook. This Imperium kind of sat on my shelf for a couple of years. But because this rulebook that came out and people say it's a much better learning experience, I went ahead and printed this. And I've been using this to learn the game. So that's my first setup game right there. And I'll be doing a video on that later. Pretty sure that'll happen. But now, what my approach is, what I'll do, I'll read right through the rulebook and I'll start highlighting things. Now, in this case, I printed the rulebook, and obviously I'm not going to do that every time because that would be a lot of paper and ink. All right. The reason this worked out this time is because there is a much better version of the rulebook, so I can allow myself to print it. And there has been a couple instances where this is the case. Maybe the rulebook is only available digitally, or there's a second edition of the rulebook. Another example where this happened was with the Folklore, the Affliction rulebook, right? Because I had a first edition, I went ahead and printed the second edition rulebook, and I allowed myself to highlight things. Now, how do I choose what to highlight, right? As you play more and more games, you're gonna start hopefully developing the ability to point at rules or observe rules that are unique to this game. All right, because as you play more games, there are certain things that you might take as a given, right? For example, in deck builders, typically, since Imperium is a deck builder, when you run out of your deck and you need to draw a card, you just shuffle your discard pile and draw, right? If that's somewhere in the rulebook, I'm not gonna highlight that. So I take that, that's a given for me. So I'll start highlighting things. I'll start highlighting things that that might not be very common, that I haven't seen in other games, that I believe I need to make sure I remember for this game. Now, when I don't have the ability of highlighting the rule physically, I've never highlighted the actual rule book that comes with the game because I think I would be I'm reducing the value of the game by altering the rule book like that in case I want to trade it or sell it at the end of the day, right? So what I'll do is if there is a PDF version of the rulebook, I'll create this document, right? So I'll download the rulebook and I'll manually highlight things, and I'll start copying and pasting the highlights over to a Google Docs document. So I have a template, a 2-column template. I typically try to keep it to only one page. This is one of the earlier ones, but I just reduce the font size and keep it to 2 columns, 1 page, front and back. So I'll create this document where I save all the highlights, okay? And sometimes I'll copy and paste it verbatim from the rulebook. Other times I'll type in myself and I'll paraphrase it. I'll try to take a concept that's really that's very verbose, all right? A rule that's like a paragraph long, and if I can, I'll try to paraphrase it into like a sentence if I can. So sometimes I'll copy paste, sometimes I'll paraphrase it. Okay, and this document that I create, and I have a Google Docs folder with like 50 plus of these documents for the more complicated games that I've learned over the years. This helps me immensely when I come back to learn a game, all right? Like if there's a game that I end up enjoying and I don't revisit it for many months, I will, I'll have this document that I printed inside of my game, my copy of the game, and this is one of the biggest things that will help me get back into the flow of the game. Okay, I have wanted to publish all of these over the years, because I think that they could be helpful to people. The problem is that I paraphrase things so much that a lot of them are not fit for publication. But there are a couple that I have published to date for this. That I'll link if you're interested. I have one for Shadows of Brimstone and another one for Arc Nova. All right, those are games that have tons of rules, and especially for games that have such a heavy rule set, it's imperative that I create this type of document, because if I just read the rulebook and learn the game on the spot, I'll have to do twice the amount of work, because I'll have to do all of that over again, months later, years later, and I'm not gonna remember what those important highlighted rules are. Okay. Now, as far as the method for how I can create those highlights, I want to share a couple different methods. Right, so you can just print the rulebook if you want and highlight it like I did. You can copy and paste. All right, if you have access to the digital version of the rulebook. So one of the methods that I want to share with you that you might find useful is the Adobe Acrobat app that lets you save PDFs on the cloud, and it also lets you highlight them. All right, so for example, I have the Fallout Wasteland Warfare rulebook here. Okay, and while I was on a plane, because I knew I wanted to play this game when I came back from a trip, right? So while I was waiting, I went ahead and started reading this, and I started making highlights, right? I don't typically like using the other method where I type things if I don't have a full-sized keyboard. So if I have a phone, this is the second best thing. So I'll open the PDF in Adobe Acrobat and I'll start highlighting things. So you can just tap on highlight an area like that, and you'll be able to highlight it. There's the highlight icon right there, right? Now, once you create highlights, you're going to be able to tap on a highlight and you can navigate between highlights. So if you revisit the game months later, right, you can just open this PDF and you'll be able to just navigate between the highlights like this to get a refresher on the game. So this is pretty equivalent to what I do when I create one of those documents that I showed you earlier, right? Except it's all digital. There's no different files. There's no rulebook and PDF with the summary that's separate. It's just all in one, and you can just navigate your highlights. Now, you can save this to the cloud, right? So I already saved mine, so that's why you see the red Adobe icon there. But if you want to save a document to the cloud, you just tap here, and then you say Save to Adobe Cloud Storage, and they do offer free a certain amount of free storage, okay? So you'll be able to then download this app on another phone if you change phones, or if you want to open it on an iPad or just a different device. Log into your account and you'll have all of your rule books highlighted, okay? And there is, I haven't done this yet, but I know that there is software that will extract the highlights from a PDF, all right? So if you still want to have that separate summary sheet, there is a way to do that as well, all right? So the other method I want to share that might come in handy, what if you don't have access to the PDF of like a rulebook, right? Sometimes you only have the physical copy, and maybe you don't feel like typing, maybe you don't feel like, manually writing the highlights, which I do just because I'm used to it, all right? So you're going to make your highlights, you'll spot a rule that you think that should be remembered, all right? And you manually type it, but you don't have the ability to copy and paste it digitally. Well, what you can do is, if you have a phone, an Android phone, I don't know if there's an equivalent on iPhone, but let me show you this. So if you open the camera, right, you can take a picture. Let's say I'm gonna go ahead and take a picture of a paragraph here, right? So there we go. Right, so now I take a picture of a paragraph, okay, come on. All right, and what you can do is you can click on lens, all right? So I'm gonna click on lens, okay? And lens will make your text so that you can select it, all right? And I have used this method a couple times where I don't feel like typing, like if I don't have a full-sized keyboard, I don't want to handwrite things. That's not something I haven't gone that far. But I'll go ahead and highlight things like this, and then I can copy and paste this. So I can go copy, right? And then I can go to, say, Google Keep, right? And there you go. And I have my Imperium highlights. So sometimes I'll write my highlights on Google Notes, and then I'll move my highlights to Google Docs, and I'll just format it to be letter size like this in 2 columns, okay? So I'll do that the first time. Before I do all of this, before I play the game for the first time, I don't typically watch video tutorials. That's in the very minority of times when I've learned a game. I just feel that I'll miss something if I don't read the rule book. That's just kind of my rationale for that. I feel like I can't rely 100% on just someone doing a video for it, a playthrough, maybe a tutorial plus a playthrough, but I would just rather read the rule book. That's personal preference. Now, once I play the game once or twice, I'll then revisit the rulebook. Even if it's a long rulebook, I'll typically read it all over, and then I'll highlight things that I think I might have missed. Okay, maybe when I read it the first time, I overlooked a rule that was actually pretty important, and at the time it didn't sound like something that I should remember. And then I'll just highlight it again, and I'll keep going until I feel like I haven't missed anything. All right. So with all of those highlights, I'll then update the document as needed. Typically, this is kind of a bit of a living document. Sometimes I'll even, while I'm playing on the game, I'll I'll handwrite here, and then I'll go on the cloud version of the document and update it accordingly with whatever notes I wrote here. But I'll keep just playing and updating the document until I feel that I have written anything that I think is important that I don't want to miss. And just especially from the perspective of, I'm thinking of myself, like if I wanted to play the game 6 months from now, I want to make sure I don't remember XYZ rules, okay? But that pretty much is it, folks. Hopefully that gave you a couple of ideas that might help you when learning board games, which board games take work to learn. They take work to set up, to learn, and sometimes it can be a bit of a pain. So sometimes maybe you come back from work and you just don't feel like it. You just don't feel like reading and learning. So maybe while you're waiting on a bus, or while if you're just having some idle time, as long as you don't feel foggy or anything or too tired, you can use some of these methods to, when you get home, you can start playing the games. All right. So let me know what your preferred method for learning board games is, and if you have any other tips or suggestions that might help me. All right, I'm definitely open to seeing how you approach learning board games. This is not something really that I've discussed much, honestly. I've seen a couple threads on it on Board Game Geek in the past, but what it pretty much boils down to, what I've seen people. Some people will just read the rulebook and that's it, and some people watch videos. That's kind of what I've seen most of the time. But I think making a little cheat sheet like this, which is what I do with these heavier games, it really has helped me immensely, especially when I want to revisit games months or years later. All right. So that's it, folks. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this informative. And if you have any other comments, questions, feedback, go ahead and put them in the comment section. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.